Next up is a book of short stories, the title story of which is probably one of the better known short stories from this author. Another one of those New York Review of Books imprints. This is the Lord Chandos letter, which is the title story that I was talking about, and Other Writings by Hugo von Hofmannsthal, with an introduction by John Banville. Hugo von Hofmannsthal is one of a litany of writers whose fantastic reputations in their own day have sort of dwindled. He was really considered a literary phenomenon in fin de siècle Vienna when he was writing, and was really highly regarded as Richard Strauss's librettist for some of his finest operas. Actually, he wrote the opera. He wrote the libretto for Elektra, which Strauss wrote in 1909, for Ariadne auf Naxos and Der Rosenkavalier. But he hadn't even hit the age of 20 before his writing began to draw some really serious attention. Today he's probably best known for the title story, like I mentioned, which he called Ein Brief, or Ein Brief, which is better today known as the Lord Chandos letter. Hofmannsthal's writing, at least all the short stories drawn together in this really short book, have a patina of sort of existential crisis and concern, which he manages to manifest in some interesting ways. Old literary preoccupations like character development and conventional plot have largely been sacrificed to communicate the message that something is deeply and terribly wrong. His characters all have trouble resolving where, quite literally, they begin and the world beyond them stops. Hofmannsthal makes a conscious effort to functionally blunt the senses of the reader in much the same way his characters' senses have been blunted, by the use of the otherworldly, the mystical, and sometimes automatic associations. Descriptors that readily come to mind when I think of the best of these stories are oniric, dreamlike, and magical surrealism, magical realism, even though it's not the magical realism of someone like Garcia Marquez or someone like that. The term still seems applicable. In some stories, Hofmannsthal is able to take a common message, in this case the imminence and ubiquity of mortality, and reworks it into something innovative and compelling. In the story called The Tale of the Veiled Woman, a miner's wife eagerly awaits the return of her husband from work. We can see her wring her hands, running through her mind on a loop the dozens of things that would have gone wrong that day at the mine. At the mine, the husband encounters the woman in the veil, whose presence preternaturally attunes him to the concerns of another world. When he arrives home, he notices that his body no longer casts a shadow against his house, and this, quite rightly, worries him. Over the dinner table, he tries to avoid the light of the kerosene lamp. He's noticed that the face of his wife, beautiful, young, and milky that morning, is now a skull stretched over with a piece of tallow-covered skin. She's become a walking corpse. Unable to cope with this horrible vision, we don't really know if it is just a vision or what's really there. He readies a chariot and escapes from his house and his family. In another story called Tale of the 672nd Night, there's a man living a very solitary life, accompanied only by his faithful servants, who, in carefully sustaining a his paranoid delusion. He thinks that they're always watching him, and he wants to set out from his house so as to escape them, but he only finds himself chased by a series of characters that he slowly discovers are actually avatars of his servants. Caught in a dead end, trying to find still another escape, he's kicked by a horse, and the efforts of local townspeople to help him are futile, and he dies in a small dark room, totally antithetical to the gigantic empty mansion that he's so used to living in. But at least he's free of his demons, right? I guess. The title story takes the form of a long letter to the renowned scientist Francis Bacon, written from one among his circle of literary friends who wants to apologize for the recent lack of literary output. In his letter, Lord Chandos details a most peculiar symptom. He's actually unable to formulate the most simple of thoughts. Even though he is writing this lengthy letter, he's complaining of being able to articulate a simple thought. So that requires a healthy suspension of disbelief. Here too, Chandos claims moments of heightened sensation or afflatus, but they're of no use in helping him overcome his newfound crisis. As he says, as soon, however, as this strange enchantment falls from me, I find myself confused. Wherein this harmony transcending me and the entire world consisted, and how it made itself known to me, I could present in sensible words as little as I could say anything precise about the inner movements of my intestines or a congestion of my blood. So for anyone deeply invested in the task of writing, this story haunts the imagination like a specter. For all the spookiness of some of the other stories, this one looms largest and seems to have the most serious stuff to think about. Some have suggested that this letter has autobiographical elements, as it conspicuously marks Hofmannsthal's transition from the composition of lyric poetry to drama and libretti, and especially the writing for Richard Strauss, which I mentioned earlier. Perhaps it's an ode to the impuissance of literature as Hofmannsthal knew it, a cue for the ushering in of a brave new kind of modernism. The Lord Chandos Letter and Other Writings by Hugo von Hofmannsthal.